Hi guys, it's Sarah again. Welcome to episode 2 of Album Analysis, and as promised last week, this week I'm going to take a look at Nightmare, the 5th studio album from Avenged Sevenfold. And this album was recorded and released in 2010, and it was released very soon after the death of Jimmy the Rev Sullivan on December 28th, 2009. So this was released in July of 2010, so there was a very quick turnaround time on the completed album. And it was described by the band as a love letter to the Rev, and in a way it really is, but we're going to look at that a little bit more as we go through each song. There were a few songs that were in the process of being created when the Rev passed away, and they're on the album in different incarnations. Some of them stayed pretty much the same as they were previously, whereas others changed a lot. The first song on this album is Nightmare. And, it's the titular track, and this is the song that really stayed the same from its earlier incarnation. I got the chance to listen to the demo of the song that had the Rev playing drums on it and providing backing vocals, and it really didn't change. In a lot of ways, Nightmare can be seen as the converse song to Afterlife off of Avenged last album, their self-titled album. And Afterlife was a song that was written by the Rev, and it was about finding the afterlife to be this beautiful place, but realizing that you don't belong there, and wanting to be back with your family and friends. Nightmare, conversely, is about ending up in hell and realizing that you do belong there. Unlike Afterlife, this song was written by the vocalist Matt Sanders, aka M Shadows, and whether this was kind of an answer song to Afterlife, or whether it just kind of turned out that way, I'm not really sure, but in the video for Nightmare, they do a lot of shout-outs to Afterlife. Like, in the Afterlife video, they had a spider crawling on the Rev's face, and they had a spider in the Nightmare video. So whether this was kind of a tribute to the Rev, or kind of really an answer to the Afterlife video, it might be a little bit of both. There is a lot of kind of hopelessness in the song that was there to begin with, but also is kind of amplified by the context of the song. And so that's the titular track, and so we don't want to read too much into it because it was written and recorded in almost its final version, lyric-wise, before the Rev passed away. So anyway, that's Nightmare kind of in its entirety. It's basically a song about there's a lot of hopelessness in it it always kind of was there, and it's a little bit indicative of the original idea for the album that was going to be a concept album similar to Pink Floyd's The Wall, and then it kind of changed due to the fact that the Rev passed away. Then after Nightmare is the song called Welcome to the Family, which the Rev co-wrote, and I'm not sure how different the lyrics became after he passed away, but there is again a lot of kind of the idea of hopelessness and kind of raging against what you can't control. In the refrain they say, you can't win this fight, and it's kind of this refrain where even though it's this kind of raging against things that you can't control and hopelessness and despair, there's a kind of, not resignation so much, but there's this kind of stubbornness that you're going to keep fighting even though things are hard. And so that's Welcome to the Family, which is a song that they play live a lot. And also, to go back, Nightmare, they play live pretty much consistently since they came out with it. I mean, it was a single, and it's a big hallmark of their stage shows, so they tend to play that. They also tend to play Welcome to the Family as a way to welcome people who are new to the event shows to the event shows. I've had a chance to see them, I think, 5 times, and they put on a really good show, so I will kind of incorporate some of what they do live and that aspect of it as well. So, Welcome to the Family, again, it's kind of, there's this hopelessness, but kind of a steadfast resolve to keep fighting, even though things may seem really dark. And that's kind of what this album is about at its core. It's about, even though things are hard, that you've got to keep fighting. Then we've got Danger Line. So this third song on Nightmare is Danger Line, and this is a song that goes back to a theme that appears on a lot of Avenged Sevenfold's albums, which is the theme of songs that celebrate the military and the sacrifices that they make. On their last album before this, they had a song called Gunslinger, which was basically a soldier writing to his loved ones, saying that no matter what happens, he's going to get back to them, even though he's out fighting for his country. Danger Line, kind of in line with this new sort of darker theme to everything, takes that theme but takes it a little bit darker because our narrator in the song actually dies in the song. So things get pretty dark. It's a pretty long song. I think they played this live during the Nightmare tour, but they don't really play it anymore. But it's a good song, and it celebrates a theme that Avenged always kind of goes with, and they have a lot of respect for the military, and they tend to kind of go back to this type of song. I'm not sure that the narrator is the same in each of the military songs. That could be an interesting thing to kind of look and see the similarities between the narrators, although I think that they're different people. Anyway, so after that is track 4 is Buried Alive. Buried Alive is a song that the Rev wrote the music for, and he had recorded a demo where he was basically mumbling kind of filler lyrics throughout it, so even though it was musically complete at the time of the Rev's death, it didn't have lyrics, and M. Shadows provided a lot of the lyrics. I think some of the other guys in the band may have co-written that with him too. And this song is very much about being stuck in a place that you don't want to be in, and the theme of kind of grappling with reality in the face of tragedy. It asks, tell me only if this is real. And so that kind of refrain goes through the first part of the song. And then there's this basically explosion, and literally in the concerts, at this one point, boom, an explosion would go off and scare the heck out of the audience. And then it goes into what they call the Metallica part, which is this very hard rock part. And in that part, it's kind of about being resigned to this new way of life. They're like, this is now your life, is the refrain of that part. And it just kind of talks about basically facing tragedy and kind of being stuck in it and not wanting to be stuck in it. After that, we move to another song that we don't want to take out of context. Track 5 is called Natural Born Killer. Probably a reference to the 1994 film of the same name. I'm not entirely sure if it is, but that's a good stab in the dark. This is a song that was written by the Rev before his death. It's kind of about, it sounds like it's about a hitman or something, kind of the idea of this guy who keeps killing people, and it basically becomes his way of life, and he's kind of stuck in it. So that's Natural Born Killer. After that, we go back to the theme of the Rev with So Far Away, track 6. And this is a much more hopeful song because it's kind of about the band grappling with the Rev's death, but sort of finding this acceptance and being able to kind of say that they're okay with it in a way because they kind of plan to meet him in the afterlife at some point. It was originally written by Sinister Gates after his grandfather passed away, but then after the Rev died, he kind of retooled it to be about the Rev specifically. And this is the most hopeful song on the album, so I can see why they tend to play this song. as opposed to some of the other more dark songs about the Rev that were written in a very different place. And when they play this live, everyone gets out their cell phones and lighters, and it's this great tribute to the Rev, and it's a beautiful song. So, So Far Away was also released as a single with a video that had the bandmates as children, and they actually, most of them met when they were teenagers together, because apparently the Rev was actually picking on Zachy Vengeance, one of the guitarists, and they got into a fist fight and then somehow ended up becoming friends from that fist fight. So it kind of goes back to the band's beginnings and just kind of ties their friendship together because they were really close, and it obviously hit them really hard when the Rev passed away. After So Far Away is track 7, God Hates Us, and this is one of the more kind of like straight up metal tracks. I feel like the rest of the album kind of is this sort of infusion of, it's not that it's not metal, but it is a little bit more of a mix of things, not quite so much as the album before them, where they had a song that was a straight up country song, they had a song that was like kind of a weird messed up operatic song. They had a lot of really different stuff going on the last album. So this is more of a straight rock album. But I would say that God Hates Us is probably the most straight up metal track, along with Natural Born Killer, probably. And it's kind of an angry song, basically just kind of like alternatively asking to be saved by God, but also saying like God hates us, because this is Avenged kind of raging at the heavens about the Rev dying. So that's kind of what's going on in that song. This was also another song that they used explosions for when they played it during the Nightmare tour. But they haven't played it in the last 2 tours, so I wonder if it'll make a comeback at some point. And then we move on to what is one of my favorite songs on this album, Victim. Victim is such a great song, and they have not played it live. I don't know if it may be because this is such an emotional song for the band, maybe that's why they don't play it, or maybe it just didn't make the cut. But this song really hits on all 5 stages of grief, because there's denial. In the chorus they say, and some say this can't be real. I had to make sure I didn't mess up the lyric. And then in the next line he says, M. Shadow says, and I've lost the power to feel tonight. So that's like denial and depression in the same line. And then later on there's a part where he's almost kind of angry at the Rev for leaving him. And that's kind of the anger piece. And then there's also bargaining, because at one point he says that he would give up everything just to bring the Rev back. And then at the end of the song, there's acceptance, because he basically just says that he misses his friend. And this whole song kind of almost takes place, it's like you're at a funeral and just kind of remembering the person who passed away. Throughout the chorus, they say the line, we're all just victims of a crime. And then at the end it changes to, we've all been victims of a crime, which makes this a universal thing. And I don't know if they intended it to be for everyone who has ever like suffered a loss in their life, or whether they meant it like this was all the fans of the Rev lost him at the same time. But it works for both, honestly, and it just is a really stirring song. And this was apparently one of the first songs that was written after the Rev passed away, when they were just kind of like still reeling. And you can really feel that shock in the song and just the pain that the band was feeling. It's a great song. I love Victim. After Victim, we move on to Tonight the World Dies, which is kind of another really somber song. I mean, it's a really somber album throughout. Like, there's not really like a happy song on this album, but it's another really kind of somber song. And it's basically this, another kind of song where it's sort of asking why, and like just saying, I mean, in the refrain, you know, tonight the world dies, that everyone is kind of suffering this loss with them, that everything is gone because they lost their friend. And it's a really good song, and it just kind of has there's a lot of atmosphere going on in it, and it's a beautiful song. Then we move on to the song that I'm sure you guys all want me to talk about, and the song that I name dropped in the last one, Fiction. Fiction has a really interesting fiction. Fiction really has a interesting story behind it because it was the last song that the Rev ever wrote and the last song that the Rev ever recorded his vocals on. And he actually recorded them, I believe, Christmas Day of 2009, which was 3 days before he died. He wrote the song, and remember back then it was supposed to be a concept album kind of akin to The Wall. And he wrote this song and apparently he handed it to, I think, M Shadows and said, this is the last track for the album. It's right here. And we don't have Rev singing it through because, like I said with Buried Alive, he would go in and just kind of sing like filler lyrics, you know, like la 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 la, just kind of like where his vocals would go on the song. And we don't know whether he intended to sing it or whether he was just kind of doing some vocals here and there and kind of he was going to bring M Shadows in to sing it, what the idea for the whole concept was going to be from a concept album point of view. But this song is this really stirring goodbye from the Rev to his friends, to all his fans, to everybody. And we have a couple of lines of him singing it. And then M Shadows came in and sang it with him at some points and then kind of would pick up where he left off. The same way as, like I said, Brian May sang the last verse for Mother Love when Freddie Mercury was unable because he was too sick. So, similarly, we have M Shadows kind of picking up the torch from the Rev and singing the song that, this is Mona, that the Rev wanted him to sing. And now there's a lot of misconceptions about this song because when it came out, because it is this song talking about when I'm gone, you know, you're going to still be able to make it through is basically kind of the theme of the song, and that I know where I'm going on the other side. A lot of people got it into their heads that this was a suicide note, that Rev wrote the song, handed it to M Shadows, and then went off and did something really bad. But it's really not. And because you have to look at the other songs that the Rev wrote. The Rev was always writing about death and the afterlife. In the last album, there's the song Afterlife. There's also A Little Piece of Heaven, which is a really messed up song that involves a lot of death. Even look at his other song that he wrote for the album, Natural Born Killer, which is about a guy who goes around killing people. This is kind of what the Rev tended to write about. We also, again, don't know what the concept of Nightmare is going to be. All we really have is the song Nightmare, which is about a guy dying and going to hell and getting, like, eaten by demons. And then we have the Rev song, which he had originally titled Death. So we can kind of assume that it was going to be a pretty dark album to begin with, and then it just kind of took on a new life after the Rev passed away. It's kind of like, you know, Roger Waters for The Wall wrote Goodbye Cruel World, which in the context of the concept album of The Wall, it's not exactly like a suicide note, but Pink, the main character in The Wall, is saying that he's done with everyone, and he's going to lock himself behind the wall. If someone had come in, turned on The Wall, and gone like, oh, this is clearly something is wrong with Roger Waters, that would not really be in context with what the whole album was about. So we have to look at this song in the context of what the Rev usually wrote about, which was this kind of stuff. That being said, given the fact that he did pass away accidentally 3 days later, it is this beautiful farewell from him that really works well with him and M Shadow sharing vocals, and they do play this song live. And they use the Rev's pre-recorded vocals on his part. They have a big piano that they light up when the Rev's piano is playing. It's really beautiful to see live. Definitely, if you get a chance to see Avenged Sevenfold, definitely go see him. So that's Fiction. I wanted to clear up some of the misconceptions with that song because so much was really raging about it. But like I always say, you have to look at every song in context. And this is a song you have to look at both in context of what the Rev writes about and what the original concept for the album probably was going to be. Then, our last track, which I kind of forgot about when I name dropped it in Made in Heaven episode, so sorry guys, is a song called Save Me. And so it's not the last that we hear from the Rev in fiction. It's the last time he sings, and it's the last song that he wrote. But we do hear a sampled scream of his in Save Me, which is a 10-minute song. And it's basically this song about asking kind of why this happened. And it's goes through a whole lot of different things. And again, it's kind of very 5 stages of grief type of thing, because they're asking why. And then at the end, they have this great lyric. They say that all beauty must die, I say it just moves on. Which is kind of like the band really coming to grips finally with the Rev being gone, but kind of wanting to make like this album in his memory, which I think worked really well. There's also a bonus track called Lost It All, but since it's entitled Non-Album Bonus Track, I'm not going to tackle it here because it's not really part of the concept of the whole album, but it's a good song. So basically, suffice to say, that's Nightmare song by song. It works really well as an album, as a concept, in the face of tragedy. I think if someone's not familiar with Avenged Sevenfold, it is a good album to start with, because even though it's a metal album, it's very accessible metal. It's music that a lot of people who maybe aren't metal fans can still relate to, can still get behind. Everyone has experienced some kind of loss in their life, whether it was, you know, death of a loved one, or like something just happened that stirred your world apart. Everyone can relate to that. So everyone can really feel where the band was when this album happened. And so like I said in the Made in Heaven episode, these two albums have kind of a similar theme, the idea of a death of a bandmate, but they became very different albums because in Made in Heaven, with the exception of the other 2 verses of Let Me Live, Freddie sings everything. So it's kind of this idea of taking him back from the beyond and giving him his one last stage show, basically. Whereas with Nightmare, there's this last piece by the Rev with fiction, and if you count the stuff that he wrote on as well. And there's this sort of idea of the band coming to grips around him and kind of putting their 2 cents in, which wasn't there with Made in Heaven. The band really didn't have a voice in Made in Heaven because it was so much stuff that was kind of around Freddie. Now that being said, Queen did say their piece. That was No One But You, parenthesis, Only the Good Die Young, which didn't come out until 1997. So it took Queen a very, very long time to even be able to write about what they had experienced when Freddie died. Whereas Avenged kind of went at it full tilt. And so they were at a very different place. Queen was kind of at a place of acceptance with No One But You, whereas Avenged was still really mad when they wrote Nightmare. Anyway, so I would definitely recommend this album to people who aren't familiar with Avenged. It's a good place to start. It's a good album. I would say, if you're like a parent watching this, going like, I want to get my kids some metal, listen to it first. There is some profanity and some dark themes. If you're somebody who has recently gone through the loss of a loved one, or you're in a dark place, it could be kind of triggering, so just kind of proceed with caution. But overall, really good album, definitely recommend it. And if you get a chance to see Avenged live, they're an amazing band. Right now, they kind of had to cancel their tour because M Shadows has some kind of throat infection. So feel better, M Shadows. We definitely want to see you back on tour as soon as possible, so do whatever your doctor tells you to do. And, like I gave a kind of a plug for Mercury Phoenix Trust at the end of the last episode. Avenged does a lot of work with charities too. The most recent thing I could really find was the hashtag Together We Heal campaign, which was a shirt that was, it was raising money for UNICEF and a couple other charities. So if you get a chance to check any of that, that's great. And Mercury Phoenix Trust, again, they're on YouTube, actually, right here on YouTube. So anyway, that's Nightmare. Thank you for tuning in again. The next one will probably be Queen's Innuendo, unless something else hits me first. So definitely put in the comments if there's anything you want me to do, anything you want me to tackle when I talk about Innuendo, because there's a lot that went on in that album. Do you want me to, if you want me to do more Avenged stuff, do you want me to go forward to Hail to the King, Or do you want me to go back and talk about the self-titled album? And so that's basically it. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 2 of Album Analysis. And see ya! Make sure to tune in next week when we talk about Queen's album Innuendo, which was the last album that came out when Freddie Mercury was still alive, and contained a song he wrote about a cat that looked like this that Roger Taylor hated. So this is Mona, by the way. Hi guys. Mona, say hello to your public. So definitely tune in next week when we talk about Innuendo, which was a great album, and again contains a song about a cat like this one. Bye.